Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tragic Hollywood. Tonight, we dive into one of the most chilling truths of fame, how even the world's most powerful stars can lose everything in what was supposed to be a simple surgery. Behind the bright lights and golden smiles, these celebrities walked into the operating room hoping for a cure, but never came out alive. From pop art genius Andy Warhol's routine gallbladder procedure gone wrong, to beloved actor Bill Paxton's tragic stroke just days after heart surgery, their final hours remind us that death doesn't always wait for the curtain to fall. Do you remember where you were when you heard one of your favorite stars had died unexpectedly? Share your memory below, and as we begin, let's look back at the first name on our list, the man who turned art into immortality. Number 1. Andy Warhol. It was supposed to be a simple operation, a routine gallbladder removal that doctors perform every day. But for Andy Warhol, the visionary mind behind pop art, that night in February 1987 became his final canvas. On February 22nd, inside New York Hospital, the artist who had painted fame itself slipped quietly into death after what was meant to be a safe procedure. The official cause? Cardiac arrest following gallbladder surgery. Yet those who knew him said Warhol had always feared hospitals, and fate proved his fear right. Just days earlier, he'd been sketching new ideas and talking about an upcoming exhibition. But his frail health, worsened by years of nervous eating habits and lingering infections, made his body too weak to recover. The surgery went well, the doctor said, until his heart stopped beating in the middle of the night. The man who captured America's obsession with beauty and consumerism became a symbol of mortality itself. News of his death stunned the art world. His studio, The Factory, was flooded with mourners, candles, and tears. Critics called it the death of modern art's mirror. To some, it was cruel irony. The man who turned Marilyn, Elvis, and Campbell's Soup into icons now became one himself, frozen in time by tragedy. Even decades later, questions linger. Could the hospital have saved him? Was his death preventable? Many believe it was, and the Warhol Foundation quietly settled a malpractice suit. But no lawsuit could bring back the man who made the ordinary eternal. Ladies and gentlemen, when art itself dies on the operating table, we're reminded that even legends can fall to the simplest human fragility. What do you think? Was Andy Warhol's death a tragic accident or medical negligence? Leave your thoughts below. Number 2. Bill Paxton. On screen, Bill Paxton faced tornadoes, aliens, and sinking ships, but the real storm that ended his life struck from within. In early February 2017, the beloved actor of Titanic, Twister, and Aliens checked into Cedars-Sinai Medical Center for what doctors called a planned heart surgery. He had been living with an aortic aneurysm and a damaged heart valve, serious but manageable with modern medicine. The surgery went ahead on Valentine's Day. 11 days later, the world woke to the news that Bill Paxton was gone. The official report listed stroke due to complications from heart surgery. What was supposed to be a step toward recovery became a fatal spiral of clots, bleeding, and swelling around the brain. Fans were blindsided. One day he was attending movie premieres and joking with friends. The next, his family stood beside a hospital bed watching the machines fall silent. He was 61. Paxton was more than a movie star. He was the everyman of American cinema, the guy who never quite played the hero but made you believe in him anyway. From the storm chaser in Twister to the doomed treasure hunter of Titanic, his characters carried that same mix of courage and vulnerability that defined him in real life. His colleagues, from James Cameron to Tom Hanks, called him the beating heart of every film he touched. In the aftermath, his widow and children filed a lawsuit against the hospital and the surgeon, claiming the operation was rushed and the technique experimental. The case dragged for years before being quietly settled. But behind the legal jargon lay a haunting truth. A man who gave audiences so much emotion lost his life in a room meant to heal him. Ladies and gentlemen, how many of us realize that even the safest surgery carries the shadow of risk? Bill Paxton's last role was not on screen, but in the quiet tragedy of human fragility. What do you think? Was it fate or a failure of medicine? Number 3. Steve McQueen. They called him the King of Cool, a rebel on screen and off. But by the autumn of 1980, Steve McQueen was no longer outrunning his demons. He had been diagnosed with malignant mesothelioma, a rare and lethal cancer linked to asbestos exposure. His doctors in Los Angeles told him the disease was terminal, untreatable. Refusing to accept that fate, McQueen turned to a controversial clinic in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, searching for a miracle. What he found instead was the end. On November 7th, he was wheeled into an operating room for surgery to remove a massive tumor from his neck and abdomen. It was a risky procedure, one his American doctors had warned against. Yet McQueen believed if he could survive one more race, one more stunt, one more fight, he could survive this too. The operation lasted hours. Just after midnight, his heart stopped. He was 50 years old. When the news reached Hollywood, disbelief swept through his fans. This was the man who had survived car crashes, motorcycle wrecks, and Hollywood excess. How could Steve McQueen, the untouchable icon of freedom, die on a surgical table far from home? Friends later said he'd made peace with death, even telling his wife, "I'm not afraid to die, I just don't want to." Reporters flooded Juarez, conspiracy theories flourished, claims of botched treatment, of quack doctors and black market drugs. The truth was simpler and sadder. McQueen's body was too weak to recover. His final act wasn't in a movie, but in a desperate attempt to live a little longer. In death, he became even larger than life, a symbol of defiance, of man's struggle against time itself. The rebel who raced death to the finish line finally lost, but on his own terms. Ladies and gentlemen, what drives a man to gamble his life on hope? Was Steve McQueen brave or just broken by fear? 4. John Wayne. For millions, John Wayne was America itself. The towering cowboy, the stoic soldier, the man who never backed down. But even heroes have battles they can't win. In 1964, doctors discovered a malignant tumor in his left lung. Without hesitation, Wayne agreed to an aggressive surgery, the removal of 2 ribs and an entire lung. The operation was brutal but successful, and for a while it seemed the Duke had cheated death. He returned to film sets, puffing cigars, laughing off pain, declaring, "I beat the Big C." But the victory didn't last. 15 years later, the cancer returned, this time in his stomach. Age and years of smoking and stress had taken their toll. By 1979, Wayne was a shadow of the man who once strode across Monument Valley. Doctors proposed more surgery, but his body couldn't endure another assault. On June 11th, surrounded by his 7 children at UCLA Medical Center, John Wayne took his final breath. The news broke like a cannon blast. Flags were lowered across Hollywood. President Jimmy Carter called him a symbol of courage. Yet behind the patriotic eulogies lay a quieter tragedy. A man who spent his final years fighting the very image that had made him immortal. Wayne had played strongman all his life, but cancer stripped him bare, reminding the world that even the toughest cowboy can't outdraw mortality. Fans lined the streets of Los Angeles to watch his funeral procession. On his tombstone are engraved just 2 words: Feo, fuerte y formal. Ugly, strong, and dignified. A fitting epitaph for a man who died as he lived, facing danger head-on. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever seen a hero fade away and still remain larger than life? John Wayne's last battle wasn't fought with bullets, but with the surgeon's scalpel. And still, he never surrendered. What do you think? Was his courage an act or the truest version of himself? Leave your thoughts below. 5. Yul Brynner. When Yul Brynner stepped on stage in The King and I, his presence filled the room, commanding, elegant, immortal. Yet behind that signature bald head and regal voice hid a secret enemy growing inside his lungs. Brynner had smoked nearly 5 packs a day for decades. In 1983, during a routine checkup in New York, doctors delivered the verdict: lung cancer. He underwent surgery to remove part of his lung, but the disease had already spread. For 2 years, Brynner fought back with the same discipline that had defined his career. He continued performing even through chemotherapy, sometimes gasping for air between lines, refusing to let illness rob him of his crown. "I am the king," he told his castmates, "and the king must never show weakness." By 1985, however, his health had collapsed. During his final run of The King and I on Broadway, he knew the end was near. Audiences noticed the weight loss, the trembling hands, but his voice, that thunderous baritone, remained. Just 3 months after the curtain fell for the last time, Yul Brynner died in his sleep at New York Presbyterian Hospital on October 10th, aged 65. In an eerie twist, Brynner had recorded a message before his death: "Now that I'm gone, please don't smoke." That haunting PSA aired posthumously, his ghostly voice pleading from televisions across America. A final warning from a man consumed by the very habit that built his cool image. It was one of the most powerful anti-smoking campaigns ever released. Fans and fellow actors mourned deeply. To them, Brynner wasn't just a performer, he was a monument of charisma, dignity, and willpower. Even in his final act, he controlled the narrative, turning his death into a lesson. 6. Nat King Cole. The world knew Nat King Cole as the man with a velvet voice, smooth, flawless, timeless. His songs like Unforgettable and Mona Lisa still echo across generations. But behind that effortless grace was a habit that quietly destroyed him. Cole was a heavy smoker, lighting cigarette after cigarette between recording takes, believing it made his voice deeper. In December 1964, doctors found a malignant tumor in his left lung. Determined to keep working, Cole underwent surgery at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica to remove the diseased lung. The procedure seemed successful. The press reported that Nat is resting comfortably, and fans breathed a sigh of relief. But in truth, the cancer had already spread. Within weeks, he grew weak, coughing blood between breaths. On February 15, 1965, the world lost one of its greatest voices. He was just 45. Hollywood wept. Radio stations stopped their programming for a full minute of silence. His label, Capitol Records, lowered its flag to half-mast. His wife Maria fainted at his bedside as his heart monitor flatlined. It was said that even the nurses cried, because when Nat King Cole died, the hospital halls were filled with his music. His final album, L.O.V., released days before his death, became an anthem of both beauty and heartbreak. The tragedy wasn't just that a man died young. It was that the very thing that defined his image, the cigarettes in hand, also defined his end. After his passing, sales of his records soared, but so did awareness of lung cancer in entertainers. Cole's death became a turning point in Hollywood's battle with smoking culture. Ladies and gentlemen, isn't it haunting how fame can hide fragility? Nat King Cole sang about eternal love, but his life was painfully short. A reminder that even the sweetest melodies can fade too soon. What's your favorite Nat King Cole song? Share it below. Let's remember him not for how he died, but for the music he left behind. 7. Betty Grable. In the 1940s, Betty Grable was more than just a movie star. She was a national obsession. Her smile lit up the silver screen, and her famous pinup photo, legs crossed and head turned over her shoulder, became the most popular image carried by American soldiers in World War II. Her legs were literally insured for $1 million, a symbol of Hollywood perfection. But decades later, those same legs trembled under the weight of cancer. By 1972, Grable's once golden voice had turned raspy, her breath short. Doctors diagnosed her with lung cancer, a disease brought on by decades of heavy smoking, the habit everyone in old Hollywood shared like a secret handshake. She underwent surgery at UCLA Medical Center to remove part of her lung, hoping to regain her strength. For a few weeks, she smiled again, telling friends she'd beat it just like she beat every obstacle in her career. But the victory was fleeting. Complications set in, fluid in her lungs, infections, exhaustion. On July 2, 1973, Betty Grable took her final breath, aged 56. Hollywood, once dazzled by her radiance, dimmed its lights in mourning. Her co-stars remembered her laughter, her impeccable timing, her generosity. Marilyn Monroe once said, "Betty paved the way for us blondes." In death, Grable's story carried a cruel irony. The image of beauty and vitality, immortalized on soldiers' lockers and movie posters, had been destroyed by the silent poison of her own era. Her surgery had given her a few extra weeks, but not enough to escape the fate that haunted so many of her peers. Ladies and gentlemen, behind every glamorous photograph lies a human being, fragile, hopeful, afraid. Betty Grable's last curtain fell not on a film set, but in a hospital room where the applause was replaced by the sound of monitors. Do you think old Hollywood smoking culture robbed us of too many legends too soon? Share your thoughts below. 8. Kathryn Joosten. For millions of TV viewers, Kathryn Joosten was the lovable yet sharp-tongued neighbor Karen McCluskey in Desperate Housewives, a character who could make audiences laugh one moment and cry the next. But few knew that behind her cheerful smile was a woman waging a private war against the same disease that would one day claim her life. In 2001, Joosten was diagnosed with lung cancer. She underwent surgery to remove part of her right lung and spent months recovering, determined to return to the screen. And she did, stronger, funnier, and more fearless than ever. When her cancer returned in 2009, she faced another surgery and more rounds of radiation. "I'm not afraid," she told reporters. "I've beaten it before. I'll beat it again." Her optimism became part of her identity, and her colleagues described her as the toughest woman on Wisteria Lane. But by 2012, her body could no longer endure the battle. On June 2nd, just weeks after the Desperate Housewives finale aired, in which her character also died of cancer, Kathryn Joosten passed away in her Los Angeles home. The eerie parallel between her final storyline and real life left both fans and co-stars heartbroken. Felicity Huffman wrote, "She was the soul of our cast." Eva Longoria called her a light of courage. In interviews, producers admitted they based Joosten's on-screen death on her real medical journey, a tribute she insisted upon because she wanted people to talk about cancer honestly. Her life wasn't a tragedy of fame, but of strength. Twice she faced surgery, twice she walked back to set, and even in her final moments, she was cracking jokes with nurses. Ladies and gentlemen, what makes a person brave? Surviving death or facing it with humor? Kathryn Joosten showed us both. Do you remember her final scene on Desperate Housewives? 9. Diana Dors. Long before anyone had heard of Marilyn Monroe, Britain already had its own blonde bombshell, Diana Dors. With her sultry eyes, hourglass figure, and quick wit, she was the very image of post-war glamour. Yet beneath the shimmer lay a woman constantly fighting fate, in love, in fame, and finally, for her life. In 1982, doctors found ovarian cancer. Dors faced it like she'd faced everything else, head held high, lipstick on, and a defiant smile. The first surgery removed one tumor, then another the following year. She told reporters she would beat it and come back stronger, even as she secretly struggled through pain and exhaustion. But each operation weakened her body more, and the chemotherapy burned away what remained of her strength. By 1984, Diana was in and out of hospitals, still clinging to her sense of humor. When nurses asked how she felt, she'd joke, "Still fabulous, darling." But on May 4th, at Windsor's Princess Margaret Hospital, her heart gave out during recovery. She was only 52. Her husband, actor Alan Lake, was inconsolable. 6 months later, unable to cope, he took his own life, another cruel twist in a story already filled with tragedy. Britain mourned not just an actress, but a symbol of resilience. Newspapers wrote that Diana Dorse sparkled until the very end. She had once said, "They'll remember me not for the films, but for my fight." And she was right. Even today, fans recall her as the woman who refused to let illness steal her dignity. Her life was a paradox. Adored for her body, yet remembered for her courage. Her surgeries may have failed to save her, but they revealed something greater, her unbreakable spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think beauty ever protects anyone from tragedy? Diana Dorse proved it doesn't, not even when the world calls you perfect. What do you remember most about Diana Dorse, her glamour or her grace in the face of death? 10. Tony Roberts. He was never the loudest man in the room, yet whenever Tony Roberts stepped onto a Broadway stage or appeared in a Woody Allen film, people listened. With his polished charm, steady voice, and piercing eyes, Roberts embodied the kind of performer Hollywood doesn't make anymore. But in his final years, his quiet confidence hid a grim reality. In early 2023, Roberts was diagnosed with lung cancer. Friends say he remained calm, even serene, insisting he'd already lived a life filled with laughter and applause. The doctors recommended surgery to remove part of his lung, a chance, they said, to extend his life. He agreed without hesitation, telling a friend, "I've performed in enough dramas to know how this one might end." The operation at a New York hospital went as planned, but complications soon followed. Infection, bleeding, and relentless weakness set in. On April 2, 2023, Tony Roberts passed away peacefully, surrounded by family. He was 83. The stage lights dimmed across Broadway that night, and longtime collaborators like Woody Allen and Diane Keaton called his death a quiet earthquake. For half a century, Roberts had been a fixture of both theater and film, from Annie Hall and Play It Again Sam to Xanadu and dozens of stage classics. He wasn't the headline star, but he was the actor other actors trusted. Critics called him the spine of the scene. His death after surgery reminded many of the fragility that fame often conceals. The audience applauds, the curtain falls, and behind the applause stands a man whose heart still beats with nerves and fear. Roberts knew that feeling. He once said, "Acting is like breathing. Stop and you die." Tragically, it was his breath that betrayed him in the end. Ladies and gentlemen, isn't it strange how even those who give us words for living can fall silent so suddenly? Tony Roberts' story reminds us that life's final act often comes without warning. 11. Chuck Connors. He stood 6'6", broad-shouldered and commanding, a man built for the Western frontier. Chuck Connors, star of The Rifleman, was the kind of actor who looked indestructible. Before Hollywood, he was a real athlete, a baseball player for the Brooklyn Dodgers, a basketball player for the Boston Celtics. To audiences, he was the symbol of American masculinity. But beneath that tough exterior, Connors was quietly fighting a battle he couldn't win. Years of heavy smoking had scarred his lungs. In the early 1990s, doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer. He underwent surgery to remove part of the damaged tissue, determined to return to work. "I've taken hits before," he told a friend. "This one's just from the inside." But recovery never came. Post-operative complications, pneumonia and infection weakened his already frail lungs. On November 10, 1992, the man who'd played cowboys, soldiers, and heroes died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 71. The news stunned fans who had grown up watching him on television. Co-stars described him as generous, fiercely loyal, and endlessly driven. Actor Johnny Crawford, who played his son on The Rifleman, said, "He was my hero on and off the screen." Tributes poured in from around the world, calling him the last of the real cowboys. Connor's death carried an unmistakable irony. The man whose on-screen weapon was a rifle had been killed by a slower, deadlier enemy. His surgery, meant to prolong life, had instead exposed just how much damage decades of smoke had done. At his funeral, his trademark hat rested on the coffin, a silent salute to the roles that defined him. He once said, "If you can't live like a man, die like one." In the end, he did, stoic, proud, uncomplaining. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think men of that era knew how fragile they really were? Chuck Connors died as he lived, trying to stand tall, even as his body gave out beneath him. What do you remember most about him? The athlete, the cowboy, or the father on screen? 12. Dana Reeve. She was known first as the woman who stood by Superman, the wife who refused to leave Christopher Reeve's side after his devastating accident. But Dana Reeve became a hero in her own right, embodying grace, courage, and unconditional love. And then, in the cruelest twist imaginable, she was struck by the same fate she had once helped her husband endure, a battle for life itself. In 2005, Dana began feeling unwell. Doctors delivered the news no one expected: stage 4 lung cancer. She had never smoked a day in her life. Friends said her first reaction was disbelief, followed by determination. "I've already faced the impossible once," she said. "I can do it again." She underwent surgery and treatment at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, clinging to hope for her young son, Will. But cancer doesn't respect courage. Her body, already weakened by years of caregiving and grief, could not withstand the fight. On March 6, 2006, just 17 months after losing her husband, Dana Reeve passed away at 44. The world mourned not just a widow, but a woman who had become the face of resilience. Her death shocked even doctors. A non-smoker with lung cancer was rare then. The Dana Reeve Foundation later became a symbol of hope for families facing paralysis and terminal illness, carrying her name forward as a promise that compassion can outlive tragedy. At her memorial, Meryl Streep called her a real-life Lois Lane, strong, intelligent, and unbreakable. Even in her final interviews, Dana had spoken of the future, saying she believed she'd see her husband again. Perhaps that's what gave her peace as she drifted away. Ladies and gentlemen, some people fight for life even when life has already taken everything. Dana Reeve was one of them. Do you remember watching her beside Christopher Reeve during those difficult years? 13. Amanda Peterson. In the late 1980s, Amanda Peterson was every teenager's dream, the golden girl from Can't Buy Me Love, whose smile captured innocence and rebellion all at once. Hollywood promised her the world, but Amanda was never built for its chaos. She walked away from fame in her 20s, searching for peace in her hometown of Greeley, Colorado. For years, she lived quietly until illness pulled her back into a tragedy no one saw coming. In early 2015, Amanda underwent surgery to remove her uterus, hoping to resolve years of painful health issues. The operation was successful, but recovery was difficult. She was prescribed painkillers, morphine, and sedatives to manage the agony. Days later, her family couldn't reach her. On July 3rd, police found her lifeless in her apartment. She was just 43. The autopsy revealed an accidental overdose of prescription morphine combined with anti-anxiety medication, a lethal mix that stopped her heart while she slept. News of her death shocked the world. Fans flooded social media with memories of her role as Cindy Mancini, the girl who made a nerd feel like a hero. Her co-star Patrick Dempsey wrote, "Amanda was a bright light, and I'll always remember her smile." But behind the tributes lay an uncomfortable truth, that her death, like so many in Hollywood, wasn't from scandal or excess, but from medical aftermath. Her surgery wasn't meant to kill her. It was supposed to heal her. Yet pain and prescription dependence became another silent epidemic, one that has claimed far too many artists. Amanda's family said she had been happy, hopeful, and planning her comeback. But fate had other plans. Her death wasn't loud or cinematic. It was heartbreakingly ordinary. Ladies and gentlemen, isn't it tragic how quiet endings can hurt the most? Amanda Peterson reminds us that even when the cameras stop, pain doesn't. What do you remember most about her? Her youthful charm or the sadness behind her smile? 14. Peter Jennings was the calm in America's storm, the steady voice millions turned to on ABC News whenever tragedy struck. From the assassination of JFK to the attacks of September 11th, his composure defined what it meant to be a journalist. But in 2005, the man who had delivered countless stories of courage faced his own final headline. Jennings had been a lifelong smoker. Even after quitting in the 1980s, the damage was done. In April 2005, he announced on air that he had been diagnosed with lung cancer. "Yes, I was a smoker," he admitted, his voice slightly trembling. "And I think that's why I got it." He began treatment immediately, including surgery and radiation. For a brief time, he seemed to improve, but by midsummer, his strength vanished. On August 7th, Peter Jennings passed away in his New York apartment, surrounded by family. He was 67. The reaction was national mourning. Every major network honored him. Colleagues remembered his meticulous preparation, his kindness, and his deep empathy. Diane Sawyer said, "He wasn't just our anchor, he was our North Star." His passing left a void not only in broadcasting, but in the homes of millions who had trusted his voice for truth. Jennings' surgery had given him a glimmer of hope, but not salvation. Even in illness, he remained devoted to journalism, insisting on being updated with newsroom memos from his hospital bed. His colleagues said he kept rehearsing scripts between treatments, professionalism until the very end. In death, his story carried a somber warning. Just as Yul Brynner had done decades earlier, Jennings became a posthumous advocate for anti-smoking awareness. ABC's tribute special ended with his own words, "If I have one regret, it's that I ever picked up a cigarette." Ladies and gentlemen, how many of our heroes pay for their greatness with silence? Peter Jennings' last broadcast wasn't on television. It was the quiet dignity with which he faced death. Do you still remember his voice on the evening news? 15. Steve McQueen. We began this journey with Steve McQueen, the king of cool, and it's only fitting that we end with him, not as the legend on a motorcycle, but as a man who dared to gamble everything on one last breath. In his final days in Mexico, the hum of hospital machines replaced the roar of engines, and the rebel spirit that once outran death lay still on a white-sheeted bed. Those who were there said McQueen's face looked peaceful, almost victorious, as if he had finished one final race. He had always believed life was a challenge to be conquered, and even in dying, he refused to surrender quietly. The surgery that killed him wasn't an act of recklessness, but of hope. He wanted to live, to love his wife Barbara Minty a little longer, to see another sunrise. That was the man behind the myth, fearless, flawed, and painfully human. After his death, the world mourned like it had lost a piece of its courage. Co-stars and directors called him irreplaceable. Moviegoers packed theaters to watch The Great Escape and Bullet again, hearing the echoes of his spirit in every line, every look. His ashes were scattered in the desert, the place he said made him feel free. McQueen's story closes our list because it captures the truth behind them all. Surgery for these stars wasn't just medicine, it was hope. And sometimes, hope is the most dangerous thing of all. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we've walked through the final corridors of fame, through hospital rooms, surgical lights, and the fragile heartbeat of 15 souls who once seemed untouchable. Andy Warhol, Bill Paxton, Steve McQueen, Dana Reeve, and so many others. Each went under the knife with faith that tomorrow would still come. Instead, their tomorrow became legend. These stories remind us that mortality doesn't care for money, beauty, or applause. Behind every glittering career stands a human being who bleeds, who fears, and who hopes. And though their surgeries ended in silence, their lives continue to echo in art, in film, in song, and in memory. Which of these stories touched you the most? Share your thoughts below. And if you believe these legends deserve to be remembered, subscribe to Tragic Hollywood for more untold stories behind the fame.